The Trumpet Daily is presented by Stephen Flurry. The program analyzes world news and history from a distinct perspective and compares current events to prophecies found in the Bible. The program also offers free educational publications, including the Trumpet News Magazine and books and booklets. The Trumpet Daily is produced at the Philadelphia Church of God's home campus in Edmond, Oklahoma, and its sister campus in Edstone, England. More information is available at thetrumpet.com.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Today's world news, what it means, where it's taking us.
I bring you the one and only possible message of world peace.
This is a message of hope, tremendous hope. And he said unto me, you must prophesy again.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
I think if I weren't president, you could have had World War III. I think you would have had a much bigger problem than you have right now. But right now, it's a big problem. It's a big problem for Europe, and they're not handling it well. I do explain to Europe, because I think, you know, I'm supposed to be a very smart person. I have eyes. I have ears. I have knowledge. I have vast knowledge. I see what's happening. I get reports that you will never see. And I think it's horrible what's happening to Europe.
Everyone that came up to me, even at dinner last night, from all over the world, this is the greatest opportunity we've had to reset sort of the global discourse, to be able to effectuate actual change, because they understand that my father is a guy that can get things done. He's perhaps the only one that could get some of these people to a table, effectuate real peace. Hopefully bringing in Europe, which has its own problems, and that's been a consistent theme throughout the last few months of me speaking at conferences, is what's going on in Europe.
You know, sir, it's sometimes hard to tell when you say these things. Do you intend to send kind of a message of tough love to our allies to push them to make reforms? Or do you think that many of them are just weak and you don't really want to be allies with them?
I think they're weak, but I also think that they want to be so politically correct. I think they don't know what to do. Europe doesn't know what to do. They don't know what to do on trade either. I mean, I look at a lot of the trade situation that's going on over there. It's a little bit dangerous, but Europe, they want to be politically correct, and it makes them weak. That's what makes them weak.
So how involved are you going to get? I mean, could we see you getting involved in European elections,
I want to run the United States. I don't want to run Europe. I'm involved in Europe very much.
Might you endorse
NATO
candidates?
calls me daddy. I mean, I have a lot to say about it. Look, I raised, the GDP from 2% to 5%. The 2% they weren't paying and the 5% they are paying. And they're paying it because when we send things over, NATO pays for it, and I assume they give it to Ukraine. But Europe is being destroyed. I'm friendly with all of them. I mean, I like all of them. I have no real enemy. I've had a couple that I didn't like over the years. I actually like the current crew. I like them a lot. But and I know them very well. I know them really well. Some are friends, some are okay. I know the good leaders, I know the bad leaders, I know the smart ones, I know the stupid ones. You got some real stupid ones too. But they're not doing a good job. Europe is not doing a good job in many ways. They're not doing a good job.
I want to ask you about that.
They talk too much, and they're not producing. We're talking about Ukraine. They talk, but they don't produce.
This new U.S. security strategy, it triggered reactions across Europe over the weekend. And today, some headlines going so far as to say Europe's leaders can no longer deny that the relationship with the U.S. has changed. Transatlantic seismic shift. Well, what kind of picture of Europe is this administration trying to paint? Does the transatlantic relationship remain the most important for Washington? Or are the U.S. and Europe becoming adversaries, enemies even?
There you go. It just makes your head spin what's happening right now in Europe and the relationship between Donald Trump and European allies, the budding relationship between Germany and Israel. And so much of this is just going unnoticed. I mean, even just the daily news cycle every day, the items that get the attention. We'll talk more of that in just a moment here. But it really, just following on what we discussed yesterday, I think these are things that we're going to have to keep watch on because so many Bible prophecies factor into what's happening right now. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We appreciate you joining us on today's show. You can get to the live video stream of this program at our website, thetrumpet.com, or at the Rumble channel, rumble.com/Trumpet Daily. You can email the show, td@thetrumpet.com. So our producer yesterday, he was looking at this Google, we're coming up to the end of the year montage. Our viewers can always look forward to a full hour of all the highlights, all the main stories of the year, all of the stories of prophetic significance. And Sam was looking yesterday, saw this story from Google. These are the highlights of the year. And he was just saying to some of us, I didn't even recognize but maybe 3 or 4 of them because of what this world, America in particular, considers to be important. We are so distracted. Our heads are so deeply in the sand. People don't care about Bible prophecy, not like they should. I mean, there was a time way back in the early years of Herbert Armstrong's ministry when people were starting to pay attention, but it took, like I said yesterday, it took events like Pearl Harbor just to get people's attention. Now, that was back in the 1940s. Look at all of the distractions. I mean, Mr. Armstrong said about, Satan's influence on human nature. He says he just surcharges the air with his attitudes, his impulses. And then look at all of the gadgets and the technology and the Hollywood and the entertainment and the music and the sports. And people don't know what's going on. They don't know how significant this break is between the United States and Europe. I mean, the criticism that the Trump people are leveling at Europe, it's really something to behold. And then Europe's response. How anyone, as I said yesterday, how anyone in the Trump, team could say, yeah, let's just hurl all of these criticisms, put downs at European leaders, and, they'll still treat us as an ally. They'll still love us. Everybody just wants a good deal. We're going to be caught unawares, and that's what your Bible says. In verse after verse after verse, I keep mentioning 1 Thessalonians 5 and verse 3, saying that when we say peace and safety, just know what's coming. Sudden destruction. I think if I weren't president, you could have had World War III. So Donald Trump saved the world. Remember how we talked on that when they'd say that the dear leader, Barack Obama, was coming to save the world? He was going to move the tides of oceans as well. These people and their confidence, Joe Biden was the same way. They're so sure of themselves. They are convinced their policies are going to fix everything. They're convinced that peace is spreading everywhere. They know the way. Only God knows the way. We can't do anything without God. It is true that weak leaders and weak policies in Europe have just opened the floodgates to radical Islam taking over the continent. But really, when you read between the lines of all this discourse that you're seeing, the policy paper that came out over the weekend, we went through this yesterday on the show, really what both sides of the Atlantic are saying is that, what we need is a revival of the Holy Roman Empire. That's the solution. Instead of looking to God instead of turning to God. And both sides, I mean, they're going to be saying, this is the way. This is going to solve it. We've got to go it alone because we can't trust America, so we need a new German war machine to lead a united Europe. And that's prophecy coming right out of the pages of your Bible. How swift and how sudden. There's a verse in Hosea, by the way, where it talks about our nations. Where is it? The Hosea 5 and verse 5. And the pride of Israel, that would be America, does testify to his face. Therefore shall Israel and Ephraim fall, that's Britain, fall in their iniquity. Judah also shall fall with them. I mean, they're all going to fall together. It's going to happen at the same time. It's going to be sudden. Jesus said, watch ye therefore. This is in Mark 13. For you know not when the master of the house comes, at even or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he finds you sleeping. You better be watching. You better stay awake. You better be alert to what's happening in the world. Psalm 73, verse 19, how are they brought into desolation? As in a moment. They are utterly consumed with terrors. A surprise attack, a blitzkrieg type attack, catching us in a moment. A trap. We played that clip yesterday from Mr. Armstrong when he talked about, the fact that it's underground for a time and there's this recess between the world wars, but then when it emerges, the Frankenstein monster, it's going to strike suddenly. That's what we've got to prepare ourselves for. Sudden destruction. There was a Worldwide Church of God minister years ago that talked about just being emotionally prepared for these prophecies as they unfold. And of course, that preparation starts in the prayer closet. Prayer and Bible study, your relationship with God. God's not even in the discussion. All of this talk about peace. Proverbs 29 and verse 1. He that being often reproved hardens his neck shall suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy. 2 Peter 3:10 says, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night. A thief, a robber, comes in the middle of the night, catches us completely off guard. This political interview, you saw some of the clips in the cold open. The headline says, this is at Politico, Trump thrashes European leaders in a wide-ranging interview. I think they're weak. And like I said yesterday, how is Europe receiving this message? I think how would you receive it? I mean, just again, looking at it through carnal human nature, a world leader coming up to you and saying, you're weak, you're pathetic. I know all the leaders over there. Some are smart, some are stupid. President Trump denounced Europe as decaying, a decaying group of nations led by weak people in an interview with Politico, belittling the traditional U.S. allies for failing to control migration and end the Russian-Ukraine war, and signaling that he would endorse European political candidates aligned with his own vision for the continent. We need a strong man. I mean, that's what he's calling for. He's calling for the Daniel 8 man in Europe. Listen to this from that Politico interview, clip 11.
Well, I do think your approach to Europe is so different than any of your predecessors. And
I just want to see a strong Europe.
And this national security strategy, I mean, says a lot about the changes that you want.
But you have to understand, here's my approach to Europe. I want to see a strong Europe. I have no vision for Europe. All I want to see is a strong Europe.
And so the stronger Europe gets, when Europe gets its emperor, you can see they're going to have America's hearty endorsement. Richard Palmer had that trumpet brief yesterday. America's new military strategy. Make Europe great again. Make the Holy Roman Empire great again. That's what it amounts to. Mr. Palmer said Europe is freaking out over America's new strategy paper. They shouldn't. It aims to hand them the world. This is what's happening. Donald Trump wants to promote European greatness according to his national security strategy published over the weekend, and European leaders are very angry about it. I didn't have time to get to all the angles of this story yesterday. But as I say, it makes your head spin as you consider just how significant this really and truly is. On the one hand, there's the put downs. You're weak, you're pathetic, you won't control your borders. And on the other hand, the same administration is saying, we want you to be strong. We want you to have an empire. You need a strong man. And that's what Daniel 8 says is coming. This should be alarming to everyone, certainly to every student of Bible prophecy. Here's the German Chancellor Merz. This is with, I think, subtitles or translation, clip 13.
Some of it is understandable, some of it is comprehensible, and some of it is unacceptable to us from a European perspective. I see no need for the Americans to now want to save democracy in Europe. If it was necessary to save it, we would manage that on our own.
We'll take care of our own problems. Thank you very much. And, he's not, undoubtedly, he's not going to be the emperor, this chancellor right here. But he speaks for other European leaders. You don't want to be a reliable ally? Then fine. We'll go it alone. I mean, you've got the Atlantic writing about the new German war machine. Does that catch anyone's attention? Is this something that we want? Deutsche Welle. Speaking during the visit to Rhineland-Palatinate, Merz said Washington's shift had confirmed his view that we in Europe, and therefore also in Germany, must become much more independent of the United States in security policy. So you see why they're spending billions and billions on the suicide drones and other technology, on the military. You can see why they're talking about coming together, coalescing together as a united force in Europe, the United States of Europe. Who prophesied of this 50, 60, 70 years ago? That would be Herbert W. Armstrong. Here's the brochure. He was right. This brochure tells you about that signature prophecy, the seventh and final resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire. Another article says, quoting Merz, America first is fine, but America alone cannot be in your interest. America is returning to isolationism, so they're not an ally. I mean, you heard in the cold open, the guy saying, now it seems like we could be enemies. But yet let's just turn to the next news cycle. Let's look at the Google review of all that happened in 2025. Lots of celebrities, lots of sporting events, and no Bible prophecy. I mentioned George Friedman last week, saying at Geopolitical Futures, the security document clearly states that the U.S. has no moral commitment to Europe and regards Europe as capable of self-defense. So, like I covered yesterday, we're saying on the one hand, we're not obligated to stay with you. We don't even know if we want you as an ally. And at the same time, build your militaries. Strengthen your empire. Look for your emperor. Friedman says, it can, number one, Europe therefore has two choices. It can, number one, remain as it is, a continent of small nations with long histories of animosity, or number two, it can form a federation under a single government with a single military, with the nations becoming, to a great extent, self-governing provinces. Well, that's exactly what's prophesied. And as I've told you before, this analyst, he has some he knows a little bit about Herbert Armstrong's teachings and prophecies. A federation of and what he's describing is straight out of Daniel 2. The feet and the toes, a mixture of iron and clay. That's exactly what Friedman is talking about here. Before the Federation, basically you've got a continent of small nations with long long histories of animosity. So how is it going to come together? Well, you need an emperor. Revelation 17 says they come together to support the beast for an hour. They have one mind. It's short-lived because of all of that historical animosity. But when they come together, it's a superpower. Here's Friedman describing exactly what is prophesied in the Bible. It says, if they do not hang together, they will surely hang apart. If it could somehow overcome its divisions, Europe, united and armed, would be an entity on par with China and the United States. Well, that's nothing to be ho-hum about, is it? If they can just come together, if they can somehow overcome their divisions, then they can be right on par with the United States militarily. Is that something we want? Well, if you're in the Trump administration or in the MAGA movement, the answer is yes. Yes, we do want that. Listen to President Trump in his interview with Politico, clip 11.
Well, I do think your approach to Europe is so different than any of your predecessors. And
I just want to see a strong Europe.
And this national security strategy, I mean, says a lot about the changes that you want.
But you have to understand, here's my approach to Europe. I want to see a strong Europe. I have no vision for Europe. All I want to see is a strong Europe.
Okay, that's the one I played earlier, but still, it's worth repeating. I just want to see a strong Europe, and he's going to see it. We're all going to see it. And when it emerges out into the open, and we see the power, and we see a revived Germany, and when we see the military machine in action, well, then we'll know, but it'll be too late. We'll know that we helped create a Frankenstein monster, just as Mr. Armstrong said in that clip we played yesterday. Here, you know, a lot of the criticism that President Trump's leveling at Europe, I mean, it's true, but that's what makes them so much more angry, because he's exposing their weakness. He's exposing them. He's exposing their wokeness. And they don't like being exposed. But here they are searching for an identity. And, well, what does Europe do? When it searches for an identity, it returns to its roots. We can't just have the border open and be overrun by Islam, so let's get back to that church-state union, that great false church. And then the state, the government, that adulterous relationship, Revelation 17, the woman straddling the beast. We've got a booklet, Who and What is the Prophetic Beast? Herbert Armstrong wrote that way back in the day. And you can go through Revelation 17, Revelation 13. You can see how it ties in with Daniel 2 and 7. And this is basic. This is the framework of all of Bible prophecy, really. And so many prophecies are intersecting at the moment. Satan is active. It's pretty incredible just to watch all of these separate paths converge together at once. I mean, the Holy Roman Empire re-emerging. Have we forgotten about the bloody history? Have we forgotten about how that church-led state, or that church union with state, have we forgotten how much it persecuted the little flock, God's church, the followers of Christ? You better get your nose into this booklet. I was going to pull up the true history of God's true church. That's an important read as well. But this one here, the Holy Roman Empire in Prophecy, I'll give you a quote from it. It says, "We cannot forget the reason this woman-beast alliance exists. Revelation 17:6 says, and I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus." It says here in Daniel 7, verse 25, this religion is symbolized by a little horn that shall speak great words against the Most High and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. God's people. I mean, that's been the history. True Christians have been on the run. They haven't grown over 2,000 years into an organization with 2 billion attendees. No, it's a little flock. And throughout the Middle Ages, I mean, they were scattered and on the run, persecuted. They were persecuted in the first century. Look at what the Apostle John was writing and teaching. There in the 90s AD, there was just this great rebellion, this great falling away from the church, from the truth. And he was saying, you've lost your love for the truth. There's no way you can hang on unless you have a godly love for the truth, because Satan wants to blot that out. Satan wants to destroy the church. Satan has targeted God's people. He did it in the first century. Peter faced it. Paul faced it. Jesus Christ faced it. The Apostle John, James, Jude, all of them. And Satan's not any different today. If anything, he's more filled with wrath. And he's also confined to this earth. And he's targeting God's work, God's people. And so many prophecies, as we say, they're all converging, aren't they? I mentioned the development over the weekend on yesterday's show with Chancellor Merz in Israel, all the discussions with Bibi Netanyahu, this national security strategy that came out over the weekend. We've focused, as we should, on Europe primarily. But notice this with respect to the Middle East. It says for half a century, at least, American foreign policy has prioritized the Middle East above all other regions. The reasons are obvious. The Middle East was, for decades, the world's most important supplier of energy, was a prime theater of superpower competition, and was rife with conflict that threatened to spill into the wider world and even to our own shores. Today, at least two of those dynamics no longer hold. Here we go again. Today, it's different. We're living in a different world. There's a new world order. And so what required us to be so involved in the Middle East? I mean, 2 out of 3 of them, it's no longer there. It's no longer necessary. You know where they're going with this. Conflict remains the Middle East's most troublesome dynamic, but there is today less to this problem than headlines might lead one to believe. Even conflict is so much better. You know why? Because we're making peace. We're making peace with Hamas. We're not just making peace with Qatar. They're allies of ours. I mean, Tucker's over there just drooling over them. Tucker's going to buy a house in Doha. I mean, this is unbelievable. What's happening? People don't realize just how active Satan the devil is. Play that one clip from, it's later on in my notes. It's the first one we have on Tucker in this conference that's going on in Qatar.
So last question. I've been personally, not to make it about me, but I have been criticized as being a tool of Qatar. And I just want to say what you already know, which is I've never taken anything from your country and don't plan to. I am, however, tomorrow buying a place in Qatar, both because I am
pay a high check
in Doha, yeah, and I'm doing that because I like the city. I think it's beautiful, but also to make the statement that I'm an American and a free man, and I'll be wherever I want to be, which I think is important. But that does kind of leave us in a place where I have not taken any money from Qatar. I have instead given money to Qatar.
Is that any better? I mean, you hear the reports. He's getting paid by this sheikh or whoever, but giving money to Qatar? This is very strange to watch this unfold. To speak, I mean, to be so critical of Israel and to be so complimentary of Qatar. And that's where the Hamas leadership is situated. Play clip 2, since we're on it.
The idea is that your country and you specifically are supporters of Hamas, you're terror financiers. And I'd like to just get right to the truth of that. So my understanding is Hamas is here in Doha because the United States and Israel asked you to host Hamas. Is that true? And if not, what is the truth about Hamas in Doha?
Well, thank you, Tucker. First of all, look, the starting of the relationship with Hamas and the communication was started back more than 10 years, 13 years ago, at the request of the United States. Even beyond that, like it was 19 years ago when they first participated in the election, and then when they moved their office back in 2012 here, it was used only for the communication and to facilitate like ceasefire, facilitating aids to Gaza. Now, unfortunately, Qatar has been attacked for having them here, but when you look, at what's happening within the region, this region, when you look at its conflict, it has the parties of the conflict. Sometimes they are state actors, sometimes they are non-state actors. If you have no one speaking to those non-state actors, how we are going to resolve or to reach to a solution at the end of the day? And now we have seen that this communication has led to ceasefires, has led to the release of the hostages, has led to alleviating the suffering of the people over there.
Wow, isn't that wonderful? Hamas they're just situated in Qatar to get into peace negotiations. Look at what we've seen. Okay, he goes back and says they came in 2012. It had the U.S.'s blessing. Guess who the president was in 2012? Well, the terrorist sympathizer, the one that was empowering Iran. That would be the dear leader. Hey, you guys got to open up an office for Hamas. We've got to give them some legitimacy. And then Tucker there saying or implying that Israel somehow wanted this too? Is that why Israel bombed Doha when they knew the terrorists were assembling? It's unbelievable. So, okay, they're there since 2012. What did he say? It's only for the communication and to facilitate ceasefires. Now, you fast forward to 2023, and you've got October 7. So, along the way, no strategizing, no planning, no plotting, no scheming to kill Jews. They're just there to communicate. They're just there to release hostages. And nothing said in this dialogue about why there were hostages in the first place. What is wrong with these people? Satan, the devil's been cast down. That's what's wrong. And the demons are in a mad dog frenzy. And you see their fingerprints on just about everything right now. Play clip 3.
Well, I'm confused then. If you hosted Hamas here and sent money to Gaza, both of those things at the request of the U.S. government and the Israeli government, successive Israeli governments, why did Israel bomb your country?
Well, it's, I don't know if there is, I don't know if, if any of the actions that's been, or many of the actions that's been taken, been justified.
Isn't that nice? The audience applauds Tucker's questions. Why, if you're just carrying out America's will, and Israel's too, why would those dirty Jews bomb you? Why would they send a missile strike into Doha? Here's clip 4.
And the aftermath was also unprecedented. So President Trump basically told the Israelis to apologize to you. He took your side. He took the side of an Arab country against Israel in this specific case. I don't think I've ever seen that before. I don't think it's ever happened before. What was your reaction to that?
Well, of course, President Trump was very clear from the beginning since the attack. Actually, when he was informed about the attack, he assigned one of his advisors to reach out to us, and at the same time, he called His Highness after the attack, and he expressed his frustration, his disappointment from such a thing that's happening by Israel, because he knows everything about the process and he knows how helpful we were throughout this process.
Yeah, President Trump demanded an apology, demanded Israel. That was Witkoff and Kushner when they were making the rounds, basically saying, Israel, if we're going to get into this peace negotiation, remember the one that Turkey, the Turkish leader didn't want to go there if Bibi was going to be in the room? But then Bibi, for his part, he's got to apologize for killing a Hamas terrorist. He's got to apologize. This is a montage. Just contrast this with the Jew hatred, with President Trump and his people going after European leaders. In this montage, this is number 14, listen to how the Trump officials talk, or Trump himself, talk about, you know, people like Putin or Xi or Hamas. This is clip 14.
Both sides want to get to an improved bilateral relationship, the United States and Russia.
That's true.
How can we trust that Vladimir Putin actually wants that, in that he's not also being influenced at the same time by his close friend, President Xi of China?
Well, look, we have our own discussions with President Xi of China, and he wants to get along also, and he's looking to get along, and we're looking to get along with him, and we will. I think that President Xi would like to get along, and I think Russia wants to get along with the United States.
It's China's expansion of 60% of its missile facilities. A Chinese diplomat today said in a social media post that Xi, the Prime Minister of Japan, should be beheaded for her comments. These are not our friends, sir, are they, in China?
Well, a lot of our allies aren't our friends either. Our allies took advantage of us on trade. Look, I get along great with President Xi. I get along great with China. But the only way you're going to get along well with China is you have to deal from a position of strength. And they don't want to mess around with us, I can tell you that. I thought I have a very good relationship with President Putin. I thought that was going to be my an easier one.
Yeah.
The foundational idea that I came to is that people just want to be able to live with security and live freely. They want to be together. They want to have economic opportunity. They want their children to be able to live a better life. And they want to safely and freely practice whatever religion they choose to practice. And that, for me, was really what it was about.
So we got into the room. The lead negotiator was sitting right next to me.
That negotiator was in Doha when the Israelis struck.
Correct.
He survived, but his son was killed. Is that right?
That's right. And we expressed our condolences to him for the loss of his son. He mentioned it. And I told him that I had lost a son.
And I'm looking at these guys and I'm thinking these are hardened guys who have been through 2 years of war. They've obviously, they greenlit an assault that raped and murdered and did some of the most barbaric things. They've been holding hostages while Gaza's been, bombed, and they've withstood all the suffering. But when Steve and him spoke about their sons, it turned from a negotiation with a terrorist group to seeing two human beings kind of showing a vulnerability with each other.
Peace is infectious now.
Isn't it nice to speak so glowingly of Putin and Xi and Hamas? We went from talking to terrorists to just a group of family men, fathers. Can you see why it's going to just strike suddenly? Isaiah 30 and verse 13 says, "Therefore this iniquity shall be to you as a breach ready to fall, swelling out in a high wall, whose breaking comes suddenly and at an instant." Picking up on this theme, reaching out to our enemies, to terrorist groups, to dictators, tyrants. I mean, you read between the lines, and the Trump people have respect for those tyrants and dictators because, well, they're strong. But the European leaders, they're weak, and they need to be called out for it. And Bibi, he's in the way. He's making matters difficult to make peace with Hamas. Over at the National Interest, it says, President Trump undeniably has a soft spot for strong leaders. Oftentimes one gets the impression this is the sole yardstick he applies to foreign heads of state when evaluating their political status and their usefulness to America's key international goals, regardless of actual clout or diplomatic skills of a particular interlocutor. Thus, Argentina's President Javier Milei, El Salvador's Bukele, gets special treatment from the White House. The U.S. president gets along well with Xi and Vladimir Putin. Al-Shara, the new Syrian leader and a former terrorist, was received in the White House a few weeks ago. heaped with praise and characterized as a tough guy. He's tough. European leaders are weak. But the Al-Qaeda guy's tough. What kind of a message does this send the world? The whole world is watching this. America's enemies are watching this. And I don't even think this article comments on rolling out the red carpet for the Saudi Arabian king. It says here, Shira, well, he was in the White House, heaped with praise. Even Kim Jong-un, the North Korean tyrant, was rewarded with some warm comments from Trump himself. I had a very good relationship with Kim. Another article says the U.S. president and his supporters depict today's America as a savior of Christianity in an apparently biblical struggle against wokeness and globalism. In this confrontation, American conservatives view liberal Europe as an adversary rather than a partner. If not an explicit threat to Western civilization, or if not an explicit threat. It says, in this respect, even Russia appears to be more aligned with the so-called MAGA values. In the eyes of many radical Republicans, the only salvation for Europe lies in the ascent of right-wing parties in France, Germany, or Spain. The only way that they can be saved is if they rebuild a strong empire led by right-wing parties. It's as if we've learned nothing from history. As I say, you just look at the contrast between the way we're reaching out to anyone, really. We're reaching out to all of these tyrants. Going back to this policy paper, if I could find the page, it talks about, 2 of the 3 things are no longer there in the Middle East. So, why should the U.S. be so involved? The American foreign policy has prioritized the Middle East above all other regions. And then it goes on and explains why, but then it says the world's different now, implying that, we're not going to stay in the Middle East forever. We've got other priorities. And then we're saying the same thing to NATO. 80 years it's a different world. You heard President Trump himself say, I don't want to run NATO, I don't want to run Europe. I want Europe to be strong. Listen to this from CNN. They're commenting here on the that strategy paper that came out over the weekend, clip 16.
Take note, for Israel and Saudi Arabia and others, the document says that America's reasons for focusing on the Middle East will recede. That's quite a change. And in an attempt to impose a MAGA agenda on Europe, the Trump administration warns Europe it must sharply reduce immigration or face, quote, civilizational erasure due to migration from non-European countries.
This is a retreat from the world, it seems to me. It's a smaller, weaker America. And Jim, I ask myself, why is it? Because somewhere in this document, it sort of indicates we can't afford it. But at the same time, the document is saying we're such a great, vibrant nation. We're so great. So why can't we afford this? Is it because we can't deal with our own fiscal responsibility? I didn't find anything inconsistent with the actions of the administration, but seeing it in black and white and having it unravel like this, it's a big change. It's transformational, and it may pave the way for war.
It's not often that CNN gets it right. There they are going through the policy paper and basically saying, on the one hand, you're saying, we can't lead anymore. And we've done it 80 years, okay, but forget that. We can't do it anymore. It's too costly, too many resources. We've got to focus on America first. Focus on the problems at home. And then at the same time, America's never been stronger. We've never been better. We're just raking in trillions through tariffs and such. Well, which is it? This is America in retreat. And at the same time, you listen to them talking, and they're so sure that we're stronger than we've ever been, that we're more capable than we've ever been, that we're making more breakthroughs with dialogue and peace talks than ever before. That policy paper where it talked about the violence in the Middle East, conflict remains the Middle East's most troublesome dynamic, But there is today less to this problem than headlines might lead one to believe. Israel had its 9/11 2 years ago. Just 2 years ago, 24 months. And there's the paper coming out this past weekend. Yeah, there's actually less conflict and more peace. Just keep in mind that we've told you all along that America would eventually withdraw from the Middle East. I mean, there's the big spectacular clash in Daniel 11 and verse 40, the king of the north, king of the south, and America's nowhere to be, they're nowhere to be found in that prophecy. Why? Well, because they've retreated by that point. They're too weak. They don't have the power, the strength. It says, while there are many, this is what we wrote in 2014. Well, let me just skip ahead to 2019. No, actually 2009. Well, we've said it for decades. I'll just leave it at that. Daniel 11, 40 to 44 could be considered the keynote prophecy of the trumpet. And it says, my father spoke about this prophecy to students at the college, saying the most important part of this prophecy is what it doesn't say. Read it. The United States is not mentioned once. He says, because at that time, America will not exist as a major political and military force in the world. That's coming. Just as sure as the Holy Roman Empire is going to resurrect itself, coming out of the heart of Europe. It's beating hard in Germany, and it's going to appear and strike suddenly. The collapse of America is going to happen just as suddenly. And you see already Germany filling the void there in the Middle East. You see this arms alliance between Germany and Israel, of all nations, helping each other with weapons of war. Mertz, as I said, he was in Israel over the weekend. Here's a short montage on that meeting, clip 21.
I have to say that I took note not only of our differences, but also the forthright statements that you made about what Israel is doing for the rest of humanity. You said that during the Rising Lion operation, our 12-day war with Iran. You said it just now in Ankara, quite forcefully. And I think these and other statements are very important because they reflect a deeper commitment which expresses the intertwined destinies of Israel and Germany. And Germany was committed and remains committed to Israel's security in many important ways. What has happened since the rise of the Jewish state is that we have been able to fend off our enemies. And in order to do that, we developed capacities that now enable us to reciprocate. Not only does Germany work in the defense of Israel, but Israel, the Jewish state, 80 years after the Holocaust, works for the defense of Germany. And that is a historical change that comes at the time of great international turbulence and change. Israel will control its destiny and continue to protect its security for our sake and for others as well. I have to say, Friedrich, I think we're at the cusp of a new age because I think that we will achieve the expansion of peace. And I think that we are together, we can lead this and become not a secondary power, but a primary power in the advance of humanity.
Not his finest moment. That's certainly not the rising lion of this past summer. Reaching out to Germany, reaching out to a historical enemy, and convinced. I mean, it's as if they're all drinking from the same Kool-Aid batch. Peace like never before. We're entering into a new age. I mean, they're all reading from the same talking points. And they all need God's warning message. They all need the Isaiah 58:1 alarm. Cry aloud, spare not, sound the alarm. And show my people their sins. In the morning brief, there's a section in there about America being the leading consumer of OnlyFans pornography. Oh yes, we love it. We love pornography. We love, affairs, adultery, fornication, all kinds of sexual sins. And we're righteous. We're in the midst of a religious revival, and we're prosperous, and we're strong, and we're safe, and peace is breaking out everywhere. It's a golden age. They need God's warning. Little Israel needs God's warning message. Now, again, he's being criticized from every other corner. So the poor guy, he's reaching out to anyone who will show themselves to be a friend, but this is not going to work out well in the end. That's what your Bible says. Here they are, the Israel-designed Arrow 3 system. We wrote about this last week. Sharing arms, helping each other. Israel helping Germany defend itself. This is where we are in 2025. Israel Hayom. Germany is our best ally in Europe. Wow. Who could have imagined this 70, 80 years ago? Germany is the Jews' best ally. It's now been more than 60 years since we turned the page on the new Germany. Today, German-Israeli relations are excellent. Germany's our closest ally and our most important trading partner in the world after the United States and far ahead of France. In the fight against Islamist terrorism and the presence of Iranian terrorists in Europe, Germany collaborates closely with Israeli intelligence services. It's just they're married practically. They're in bed together. And they're completely disregarding history and Bible prophecy, which says, don't trust the Assyrians, just don't do it. I have this section from, maybe I can get to it tomorrow, Isaiah, I think it's Isaiah 39, where Hezekiah, he just invited the Babylonians in to see all the wealth in Judah. And God was angry. God was angry. Let me just give you a quote. My father said this at the end of it. Hezekiah's life ended tragically. God had extended his life because he cried out to God in humility, meekness. But then here he is, reaching out to enemies, sitting down with enemies, trying to make peace with enemies that hated Judah, that hated Hezekiah. My father writes, as God's people, we must learn that we cannot cozy up to Babylon and also be close to God. You can't straddle the fence. This is brought out in Matthew 6, the Sermon on the Mount. Can't serve God and mammon. It's one or the other. You can't cozy up to Babylon and also be close to God. It says we cannot hold back or compromise with God and his way of life. If we do, we will receive a free trip to Babylon like the ancient Jews did. That would be going into captivity, into slavery. This will be a terrifying punishment. Now more than ever, we want to be on God's side. We've talked about the nonstop dialogue for peace. But you add another element to this story. Cozying up to nations or peoples that hate you, that want to kill you, that want to murder you. Reaching out to them in ways that we would never do to God. And what must God think of that? You can read through that passage on your own time. As I say, it's in Isaiah 39. But this other one from Deutsche Welle, Germany's Merz in Israel, solidarity amid Gaza criticism. It says here, if you asked people in a survey who is the current chancellor of Germany, no more than 10% of Israelis would know that his name is Friedrich Merz, Zimmerman said. For the vast majority, Angela Merkel's still the chancellor, and she was very popular here. So there's so much going on every day. Israelis follow the news more than Americans do. But even they're in the dark. They're just going, hey, and then you've got their, the editorials and the commentators saying, hey, Germany's our best ally, better than America even. And all of this happening while America's sending out policy papers for the whole world to see, announcing for everyone, we're pulling out of the Middle East eventually. We definitely want to pull out of NATO. Europe's going to have to get strong. Europe's going to have to build an empire. I mean, these are electrifying prophecies, and they're being fulfilled right before our eyes. We've got to stop there because we're out of time. It's the fastest moving hour in broadcasting. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We thank you for joining us on today's show, and we'll see you tomorrow.